The first principle now reads, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The children's version of the first principle in the Tapestry of Faith reads, we believe that each and every person is important. The 7 principles of Unitarian Universalism have a purpose. They are meant to be used along with the sources to establish and maintain a loving, welcoming, supportive community that nurtures spiritual and personal growth. The larger purpose is to create a better world through information and engagement within the fellowship and with the wider community. In this, we aspire to listen to all voices and experiences with compassion and encouragement towards spiritual growth, united around the principles that support liberty, equity, and peace while advocating for democratic process, reason, free inquiry, and freedom of conscience. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker tells us that reverence and respect for human nature is at the core of UU faith. We believe that all dimensions of our being carry the potential to do good. We celebrate the gifts of being human, our intelligence and capacity for observation and reason, our senses and ability to appreciate beauty, our creativity, our feelings and emotions. We cherish our bodies as well as our souls. We can use our gifts to offer love, to work for justice, to heal injury, to create pleasure for ourselves and others. And the great 20th century Rabbi Abraham Herschel wrote, just to be is a blessing, just to live is holy. Unitarian Universalists affirm the belief that inherent worth and dignity of each person is a given of faith, an unshakable conviction insistent on self-respect and respect for others. Human dignity entered the moral culture of the Western world when Immanuel Kant, an Enlightenment scholar, invoked it in his writings on ethics. He wrote that human beings have dignity because we can reason and make moral decisions. The word dignity signals the special responsibilities that we have simply because we are human. Dignity means status or rank, as in dignitary. Dignity indicates value. If you say a person has dignity, you are attributing value and worth to that person. Dignity also describes conduct expected of the person. If a person has a dignified manner, they act with composure, calmness, and self-possession. Dignity expresses the idea that by virtue of our capacity to act with dignity, we deserve to be treated with respect and not subjected to humiliating or degrading behavior. Because dignity describes a certain conduct, if we are acting with composure, calmness, and self-possession, then we are deserving of respect, and we can conclude that inherent dignity is our inborn capacity to act with dignity. To protect the inherent dignity of each person, we must act in solidarity with those whose ability to act dignified is threatened or attacked. Support legal and social prohibitions against violent and degrading conduct, and protect prohibitions already in place. If we act with dignity and ensure others can do, we make the world a more humane one. The first principle tells us to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, not every idea. We need to embrace an expanded view of self in which the first and seventh principles are inextricably linked. The self does not exist outside of community, but is a function of our network of relationships. As a people, as a part of the larger web of existence, our fortunes rise and fall together. So although the individual has inherent worth and dignity as a person, it is also true that an individual's identity is part of something larger, a community. The UU principles seem to claim that certain things exist in the real world. The principle espousing the inherent worth and dignity of every person does not currently exist in this world. What we are doing when we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person is committing to imagine that this vision can be brought into existence. This may seem like an oddly magical goal for a faith criticized for its hard-headed rationalism, but it is not as crazy as it sounds. This has happened before. But once something is imagined into existence, it begins to look as if it has always been there. Legalization of gay marriage is an example of this phenomenon. Do I believe that the inherent worth and dignity of every person exists now? No. However, I am committed to envisioning it. Together with others, we can imagine it so well that our vision goes viral and takes over the world. The concept of believing the first principle is not true yet. It's challenging. When you ask, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? It is the wrong question. We are not committed to beliefs. We are committed to visions and making our principles real. We struggle with the worth and dignity of people who do unspeakably awful things. This is how we make living the principles integral to our everyday lives as individuals and as a community of faith. That's my take on the principles. I have a lot of problems with the first principle because I look around me and I see people who are not acting with dignity, who are not acting as though others have inherent worth, that the inherent worth exists just with them. And at this time, I ask that everyone here speak as to how they feel about the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you, Bobbi. I liked very much how you put it into words of talking about it as a vision. That made a whole different picture in my mind as something being a vision that one can work towards. It's an action toward bringing something into sight, into being seen. And then in thinking about the first principle, it's true, it's not here now. It's in a process. It's in motion. Wish it would move a little faster. It did it one time and then it got stuck. Now we have to move a little more. But I see it as a practice in the inherent worth and dignity of each person, seeing that. And I know from things that I feel as a person and what I do and have tried in my life to do that is take opportunity to notice people, to see them, look at them in the face, and then make contact. And with people that many people will not want to do, look away, rather not, or it's uncomfortable. for instance, times going into a store and there's somebody sitting on the ground next to the entrance somewhere, and it's cold out, and this one man was sitting there, and obviously he was a homeless person, and I stopped to chat. I said, "It's really cold, isn't it?" He goes, "Oh yeah, and my hands really get cold." And I said, "Mine do too. And do you have arthritis?" "Yeah, I have arthritis." We had a long chat about that, and then I went on. And I wasn't out to save him, change his life, but to just validate him as a person there at that time in that moment. And another time I remember going into the grocery store, and out comes this really big guy. He's really, really, really big. And he's kind of like what we would, want to classify as a biker dude, He's got the clothing and the beard and, kind of like you want to run and hide. And so I looked at him and I said, "Hi, it's a great day, isn't it?" And his face just totally changed from somebody really, really scary, and smiled and said, "Yeah, it really is. Hope you have a good one." And so, you take opportunities and you do things and you see what happens. And usually it's pretty cool. And in all the years that I was a teacher in high school, a lot of faces out there in the classroom that you look at, and making sure that each one of those students knows that he or she has that value and worth was really important. So, when I worked with new teachers, I would always say to them, I'd ask them, "What do you see in your class? What do you want to see? What's your vision for your classroom? What do you want to see?" And boy, they certainly had lots to say. And then we'd say, "Well, how do you want to take it there? What do you want to do?" And so vision, great word, great word. Thanks, Bobbi.
I obviously had a lot of time to think about this subject as Bobbi was preparing her talk. I also thought a lot about it this past week when we were with our grandson in Las Vegas. When I was in college, one of my college roommates made the comment to me, "I bet you talk to toll takers." And I thought about that, and yeah, I do. I'll drive up and, a person's there taking my quarter or my dollar or my $5, depending where I am in the country, and they have a name tag on, or there's a name tag on the booth, and I'll address them by name and say hi. I make a conscious effort when I'm anywhere where someone's wearing a name tag in a service industry that I address them by their name. I mean, that's, to me, I would want to be addressed by my name instead of "Hey, you," or whatever. I also find, as like I'm walking through the halls of the VA, and all kinds of people are in there. All kinds of veterans who might have been privates through generals. And I don't know who's who or who was who. It doesn't matter to me. They'll say good morning to me and I'll say, "Good morning, sir." Because everybody to me is worth the same amount of courtesy and love that any other one would be. A couple of years ago, I was accused of being a really miserable person and being, I don't even want to use the R word. That hurt me right here, because I feel like that's not me. I am someone who really feels that the first principle is probably the most important one to me, because I feel like I don't treat anybody any differently because of anything. Well, maybe if I saw a disabled person and they needed some help, I would offer to help them. Well, that's extenuating circumstances. I just don't think any of us has a right to judge anyone by anything except being human. Duke it out.
Well, I very rarely speak in front of a microphone, but I think this is a topic that is very important. I think the principle is one to aspire to. I mean, I agree with the idea of the principle. However, on a personal level, it's very hard. And the child that I adopted 40 years ago, to me, I have struggled her whole life, my whole life with her, to affirm the fact that she has any worth or dignity. It's been such a challenge, and I have struggled with my own bitterness about having to give up so much of my life in order to support her the best I can. I keep asking myself, if there is a God, why is someone like her in the world? And I say this in front of all of you just because I haven't come to terms with any of it yet. And although I believe in the principle that everyone has worth and dignity, sometimes it's really hard to find out where that is. And I came face to face with this when I tried to write a biography of my daughter. Her name is Faye. And I got it all down. I got all the stuff over the years that I had struggled with. I got it all down. I finished it up and I put it away. And then when I reread it, it was so awful and so negative toward her that I just put it away, and I didn't think that was the right thing to do, to try and share that with anybody. But I think all Unitarians try in their best way to support all kinds of causes and all kinds of principles. But when it comes down to one-on-one, when you meet someone who really challenges your belief system, I don't know what you do. So.
Well, I'm not a big fan of television, but occasionally there'll be a little gem that just jumps right out of the screen. One that comes to mind is when Martin Sheen was, as I like to say, the acting president. There was some kind of crisis that happened. I don't recall the context, it's not important, but the reporters challenged the president on some horrific thing that a terrible person had done, some kind of mass crime or something. And his response was, well, that man was not born that way. And he went on to talk about how the absence of love and care and attention and encouragement and support contributed to the horrific act that he committed. And having a daughter who has now been teaching 25 years, second and third graders, our own great-granddaughter is now 1, and a good friend of ours just had a brand new baby a month ago. I've just been really thinking an awful lot lately about our responsibility as people and as a culture and society to the young people that are going to take our place and maybe even take care of us. So, thanks.
I too want to thank Bobbi for talking about the first principle as being a vision, something we aspire to. It's very difficult for me because I'm very judgmental. I have always been very judgmental, and I imagine that I will continue to be. Sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I write little stories about the people that I see, and they're not always complimentary. And I consider that being judgmental. But in a more serious vein, the people that I have the hardest time talking about as humans deserving of being treated as they have worth and dignity are some of the political figures that are very loud, I guess, in our world. And I'm not quite sure what to do to that. I mean, I hear people saying things like, oh, I wish so-and-so would die, or I wish so-and-so would catch COVID. That would serve them right. And then I come back and I think about the first principle, and I just think, it's not right. I mean, it's not appropriate thinking. So that's where I struggle with the first principle, is in my own judgment. Often I don't act on it, but the simple act of thinking it demonstrates to me that it's pretty difficult to treat everybody with worth and dignity.
Hi, I'm actually pretty new to the congregation. This is only my second time here, but I've always been drawn to the Unitarian Church because of this first principle. I have always searched or, looked for the right way to live my life and to interact with other people. And it actually took me to school, and I got my doctorate in anthropology because I wanted to know about people. It probably comes to, you all see me with my little companion there. I have high functioning autism. So I'm one of those kind of hidden, I don't want to call it a disability, but a different way of seeing the world. And so this first principle, again, is something that drew me to it. Also, being a female, a woman, we're viewed differently within society. And so the Unitarian Church, being such a, focusing on treating people as equals, as that we all have our worth, was really something that spoke to me. And one of the things that I see right now is we are in a very difficult time in our country, in our world combined. And so my goal and my way of honoring that first principle is to try to bring more people to the Unitarian Church, because I think so many people are seeking a better way to live and to interact with each other. And I think we lay the foundation with this first principle. So thank you.
I'm Chuck, and I value this principle a great deal, but I also am aware that it's difficult at times to live up to. I like to think that I'm a fairly liberal person in being aware of people from many different backgrounds and behaviors. ideas, beliefs, some of which I think are really bonkers. But I do encounter situations where it's difficult to know whether to speak up or not. And I had one just the other day with a neighbor who I don't have a lot of interactions with. She was telling me about how they were teaching children in our schools to hate people who are white. And I challenged her about that a bit. And I said, well, I think you're talking about critical race theory, and that's something that's taught in college in understanding more about our history of slavery and racism in this country. It's not taught to children in grade schools. We got into some differences of opinions about the state of the world and what was happening. And we finally came to at least some agreement as to the importance of treating people fairly, regardless of their race or skin color or religion. I don't think it does much good to get in arguments with people, so I generally clam up in situations like that. But I think particularly in our current society with 24-hour news, with social media, it's so easy to hear all kinds of things that are not true and that are being broadcast to try to convince other people to your point of view. So I think it makes it more difficult to have some basis of which to decide what's accurate in what you're hearing. And it makes a difference. I'm not sure that I have any answers for this, but I know it can be difficult to act on the principle of worth for every individual.
Good morning. I'm Bob Mcdonald. For the few of you who may not understand or know this, Bobbi is my sister, which is pertinent in at least one respect, in that for 70 years she's been saying things that make me think. And in some respects, I'm sorry that she and David moved to Topeka 20-some years ago, because it would have saved me a lot of thinking that I otherwise would have not done. I pretty clearly don't believe in the first principle. If I believed in the first principle, then my actions would be somewhat different, maybe in a major league different than what they are. At the height of the Vietnam War, I stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Simply stopped saying it. I would stand. I wouldn't put my hand over my heart. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't mutter words. I just didn't say it. And I didn't say it because I thought that the Pledge of Allegiance was pledging allegiance to something that no longer existed in the way that I may have hoped that it existed in grade school. In the same way, when we want to talk about our principles and how important they are, we tend to understand that what we mean is they're good in the abstract, but we don't need to worry too much about them when it comes to what we do or what we say. Because this room is occasionally filled with language or accusations or statements that are at the very least inappropriate, and by people who most of us have known for years and years. So the huge difference between what we say we believe and how we act is a pretty large gulf to try and jump over. On the other hand, Stacey Abrams did the Ware lecture at the General Assembly this year. And one of the quotes that was listed after you gave the lecture was that you have to meet people where they are, not where you want them to be. And I think maybe I like her statement better than I like the first principle, because it has to start with being willing to meet people where they are, and if we can't do that, we're not going to move beyond the way things are right now.
Skylar Starr. I've struggled with this principle in my personal life and at work. I work at Vallejo, and I've always worked over in the crisis diversion services area. And for the first 2 years of working there, I worked over at the Crisis Residence House, which is a short-term stabilization unit. And I went in very green and maybe not feeling that I could change people, but that I could make a big, noticeable difference. And the truth is that I couldn't. And I got very jaded. And I started to feel like no matter what we did, no matter how we treated people, they were always going to be who they were from the moment we met them. And to an extent, this is true. No one person is going to change another person and their beliefs and their actions. And it's important to remember this first principle and aspire to it, because otherwise, what our thoughts and our beliefs, they become our actions. And I've often reflected both with other staff and with clients on how what we think about people comes out in how we treat them and how we interact with them. And the moment that we're interacting with them, we may not feel like, we may know their entire history. We may feel we know their entire history. And maybe their history is very outwardly negative, and all we're seeing is this person's actions over and over and over again that don't seem to change and hurt the people around them. But I've also seen people change, not in huge ways. Nobody goes from being a terrible person to being, a saint. I've never seen anybody do that, but I have seen people participate in harm reduction and find ways to make their actions hurt less, to reduce those actions, and to slowly make changes that that produce the results that we're looking for. And I think that as long as we continue to aspire to this, it's never going to be a bad thing. It's always going to be a positive, because if we think that people, all people don't have inherent worth and dignity, then, like I said, it'll come out in our actions, and those actions have consequences. So.
My name is Raymond Powers. I'm a historian, by the way, and that's part of what I'm going to talk about, because it relates to this last point. For various reasons, I've decided to look into the whole concept of humiliation. I wanted to write a paper about it, and I realized as I found the literature that all of the discussion about humiliation was about, in fact, human dignity, the counter to that. And the whole rise of the idea of human dignity in the modern world has been the ways in which we've had to come to grips with how we have, in the past, humiliated people in our treatment of them. The pillory, for example. Somebody did something awful in the community. What did you do? You put them up and shamed them and all of that. So in a sense, I guess I feel on this issue of the principle is that we're on that continued path. The issue of women's liberation, fundamentally, how were women treated? Humiliation. We're pulling back continually from that. And even on a personal level, as we deal with the way I treated. An interesting little anecdote personally. I was kind of the favorite grandson of my grandfather, and he loved history, I loved history. This was always this bond. But there was something in my grandfather's behavior that nudged at me in the back. He had treated my step-grandmother, who was a wonderful person, but he had not treated her well. He, in fact, had humiliated her. Well, as a kid, I didn't challenge that. I loved being over at my grandfather's place and helping him, but I wrote about him recently, and I made sure that I made that record of my grandfather's life, that I made note of the fact that he had not treated my grandmother well. So this was like coming to terms with a relationship that I had with my grandfather, and acknowledging there was this thing that he had, behavior that he had, and kind of a reconciling of my own past in some way. But to me, it comes down to this idea of humiliation and how do we treat people and making sure that's not part of it, and then getting better at acknowledging what human dignity really means. I think the whole issue of police now, how it's this idea of how are the police treating us, treating those who are different from them. And I'm still latched to that first principle. It's fundamental. I will always hold to that, I hope. Thank you.
I'm going to repeat one thing that I said before the closing, and that is that the first principle tells us to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Not every idea that that person espouses, and not every action that that person takes. And in this way, I think, is the only way we can reconcile some of the things that we see going on in our world. In closing, when I was researching this, I ran into an author, Meg Barnhouse, and she did an essay in 2009 that closed with this: who says Unitarian Universalist principles are easy? This resonated with me, and she said, for me, the heart of liberal faith is to be connected to something greater than yourself, to wallow in the spirit of life, love, and truth, to have fair trade coffee and important conversations, to stand for love, to stand against quibbling, complaining, and flouncing off in a huff. to move toward being in right relationship with ourselves, one another, and our planet. For me, this faith isn't thin gruel. It is not even a rich and hearty gruel. It's walnuts and bananas, pancakes, mangoes, arugula, ginger, and avocado. The feast is prepared with effort, enjoyment, persistence, and commitment. Care to join me? Go in peace until we meet again.
My hair is black and red, my hair is yellow, my eyes are brown and green and blue. My name is Jack and Fred, my name's Amanda Sue. I'm called Queen of Dew, my name is you. I live in southern France, I'm from a Texas ranch. I come from Mecca and Peru. I live across the street in the mountains on the beach. I come from everywhere, and my name is you. We all sing with the same voice, the same song, the same voice. We all sing with the same voice, and we sing in harmony. Sometimes I get mad and mean, sometimes I feel happy, and when I want to cry I do. When I'm by myself at night, I hold my teddy tight until the morning light. My name is you. I have sisters 1, 2, 3. In my family there's just me. I've got one daddy, I've got 2. Grandpa helps me cross the street. My cat walks on furry feet. I love my parakeet. My name is you. We all sing with the same voice, the same song, the same voice. We all sing with the same voice, and we sing in harmony. I like to run and climb, I like to sit and read, I like to watch my TV too. And when it's time for bed, I like my stories read, sweet dreams and love you said. My name is you. We all